This year, with changes to polling places and vote by mail laws as a result of COVID-19, it's more important than ever to have a plan to vote. Even though this is a presidential election, there are many more candidates on the ballot besides the president. Local elected officials affect our lives every day. They decide who to prosecute, monitor the quality of our drinking water, and choose the leadership of our schools. 30% of voters take the time to vote and then leave some part of their ballot blank. This is a missed opportunity to choose the leaders of our communities. It's okay if you're unfamiliar with some of these more local positions. You can go to Ballot Ready for a nonpartisan guide to your entire ballot. From there, you can compare candidates based on stances on issues, biography, endorsements, and then save your choices to use when you vote by mail or in the voting booth. You can even request your absentee ballot or make a plan to vote early or vote on election day. This election matters. Make sure you have a plan to vote. Go to ballotready.org and enter your address to make a plan to vote and vote informed. Hey, Mark, you ready for the intro?
I'm a little bit ready.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 17 of We Digress, the podcast that's a hot mess. I am your host, Mike Madrano, joined as always by the man, the myth, the legend, Cloud Mark 27. The crowd goes wild.
Okay. Keep the applause at bay. You know, it's I'm here. We're gonna have some fun. I'm doing great, Michael, and I hope you're doing fantastic as well.
Dude, didn't even have to ask the question. I'm glad you're doing great, my guy. Real quick before we get into this episode, remember, guys, election day is right around the corner. There is less than 6 days. Actually, not counting today. There's 5 days until the election. If you're voting by mail at this point, it's probably safer, to just drop it off at a ballot box. Make sure that your voice is heard. Make sure you're voting this election. And yeah, Mark, why don't we just get into it? We have
Let's just get into it.
Episode.
Fuck yeah.
This entire month, guys, we have been ending the shows with a spooky story. And today we're gonna read like 4 spooky stories for you. We're gonna have a good time. Mark, I think we should probably set the mood though.
Okay. Oh,
Did you see that? For the audio listeners,
spicy.
you see that shit, dude? I just my light turned red. That's it.
You guys like this production value? Holy shit!
It's definitely production. I don't know if it has value, but it's there.
Hey, we try.
All right, guys. So I guess we'll hop into the first story. This has been a really crazy year, obviously, 2020. So I don't know that these stories are going to be scarier than the year that we've all had.
That's true.
But we're certainly going to try to put y'all in the mood, get you in the holiday spirit. This first story is called, "Our town made a strict list of ordinances for trick-or-treating this year. We should have obeyed them all." Posted by user Armchair Detectives. To the citizens of Lone Tree from the City Council, Halloween is nearly upon us. And with the recent spike in cases relating to the pandemic, we are taking extra measures to protect each other this season. Below, you'll find a list of do's and don'ts for anyone who participates in Trick or Treat this year. Remember, you can enjoy this in any neighborhood the week before the big spook. We appreciate your full cooperation with these ordinances. All children should be accompanied by a responsible adult and wear appropriate costumes. Children should wear face masks, but not obscure themselves beyond recognition. Children must wear a costume to receive any candy. If you see a child wandering your neighborhood unaccompanied, contact local law enforcement and stay with the child until they have arrived. Do not trick or treat on Calhoun Boulevard after 7 p.m. Please make sure to knock 4 times on doors at the Indigo Courts apartments. Remember not to share any candy with children who are wearing costumes without eyes. Any music coming from under the streets should be reported. Try to avoid going back the way you came on Del Rey Street. There's construction in the area. Haunted house curfew is at 11 p.m. If you encounter any flickering lights, immediately leave the area or ask the house owner for permission to stay inside until the lights have disappeared. No car should be parked near Town Square between the hours of 10 p.m. to midnight. St. Celeste Park is closed, and don't let anyone tell you differently. Take account of who is in your group. And of course, have fun. Are you fucking serious? It's gotta be a joke, I told Gracie as we snatched the flyer off the sliding glass door of the Spirit Halloween store. I had just spent the last part of my monthly allowance, and the entire afternoon searching to buy her an Elsa costume when we saw it. As I took a snapshot of the list and sent it across my friends' Instagram accounts, I told her to grab her bag and follow me across the parking lot. I was not looking forward to trick or treating with my 11-year-old sister, but it was either that or finish up the mountain of homework I was given for my online classes. So I thought I was picking the lesser of two evils. Reading the list of rules made me wonder if maybe I had made the wrong choice. You never could be sure if the people who ran our little town were being funny or serious when it came to ordinances like this. I'm sure if we stick close to the house, we won't have anything to worry about, I told her. Gracie wasn't satisfied. This year had been a slew of bad luck for her. First, the move, and then being kicked out of school because of the pandemic. She had been forced to repeat her grade because of the mess. Halloween was supposed to be a highlight, and these stupid rules don't sound like any fun. We won't even need to remember any of them, I assured her. But I was wrong about that. That night, she went all out with her costume. She loves the minions, adores them, unhealthily, really, but she was so excited. It would be an understatement to say I was a little frustrated that she didn't bother opening the one I bought her, but I held back. We left with her dancing in her homemade Harley Quinn minion costume and headed out to meet three of her friends. We stopped by a few houses on the way. Trick or treat! A smile lit on the masked man's face. His eyes gave it away. What are you supposed to be? He was looking at her. Minion Quinn! She jumped up. He threw a quick smile and dropped a Twix in her pumpkin basket, then quickly closed the door. He headed down the street, checking out the little Frankenstein monster walking alongside us. We couldn't see his face, but it was a nice costume. Enjoying the spooky season, just the three of us. We met up with their friends down by Calhoun Boulevard. One was dressed as a ghost, another as a werewolf. They all seemed to adore her costume. Imagining the smile on her face lit up mine, and, well, we were off. The night was off to a really great start. The streets were decorated well, with cobwebs covering massive bushes, corpses sprawled along the curb. Well, they seemed like the type of neighborhood to sync their lights up to Christmas music. The first house had an ancient knocker with archaic looking windows. The knock resonated through the house, increasing in volume with each echo. A man in a ski mask opened the door. Trick or treat, the kids chanted in unison, breaking the awkward silence that hit the man's gaze. Well, I guess I'd prefer a treat, he beckoned, handing over handfuls of candy. Score! They jumped in unison. They seemed ecstatic to have such a haul. The six of us kept heading down the street, where the handfuls kept getting larger. We didn't really keep track of time, but it seemed darker than it should have been. A frigid breeze blew through the neighborhood, making our costumes flutter to match our insides, and I couldn't help but to start shuddering. There was a growing sense of unease about the evening. Uh, does does any of us have a phone? I squeaked hopefully. I knew damn well that Gracie didn't have one, and mine was at 5% when I walked out of the front door. But I was hoping our silent companion had come prepared. They were by themselves after all. Sure, they had someone at home waiting for them. My sister and I looked at the Frankenstein monster expectantly. He lifted his hand, palm up, in response, as if expecting something of his own, a quid pro quo, if you will. I froze in confusion, becoming increasingly irritated that this was taking so long. Gracie, however, didn't hesitate. She reached her small hand into her bag and pulled out a mini Hershey's chocolate bar. The wrapper was decorated with a gravestone, the name Rick R. Mortis carved into its face. I stopped her as she went to hand it to him. Take off your mask first, please, I insisted. I'll give you all the Hershey bars you want, but you gotta take the mask off first. Mike, no, Gracie shouted. If he takes his mask off, it's against the rules. It said so on the paper. No, it said that all kids have to be dressed in costume, I reminded her. Besides, if it's past 7 o'clock, we've already fucked up. Her face fell at my choice of words, which made me feel guilty, but also a little annoyingly adorable. The other kid that had joined us seemed to resist my request, and I sighed and remarked, Look, take off the mask or I'm calling the cops. This time he complied, but it wasn't what I anticipated at all. From beneath the mesh material, 100 tiny dark insects skittered out of his eyes and mouth, causing Gracie to scream and run towards the nearest house. I watched in confusion and horror for a long second as I scrambled to follow her, the door opening without us even bothering to knock. I slammed the door shut behind me and leaned against it. My chest heaved desperately as I struggled to catch my breath. The lights started to dance and flicker with every inhalation. Gracie, we need to get out of here, I wheezed as I spun around. The foyer was empty. A surge of anxiety shot through my nerves. I stumbled forward in desperation, hoping Gracie was in the adjacent room. Gracie! Gracie! I hollered to no response. She couldn't have run far. The house was an old two-story Victorian. I doubt it had any more than a dozen rooms. Hello? Is anyone here? You didn't ask permission, an elderly voice groaned from the darkness. You must ask for permission. Look, something weird is happening outside. I don't mean to intrude. I'm just trying to find my sister. An ancient looking man lumbered up from a patchy leather recliner. He had a skeletal frame punctuated by an enormous pot belly. His dry, blistered skin hung so far off his bones it looked like it could drip right off. He was completely nude, save for a clumpy adult diaper that looked like it hadn't been changed in days. You must ask for permission, he pointed, a yellow, shit-crusted fingernail in my direction. Hey, man, look, I said I was sorry. Just let me find my sister and I'll be on my way. You can call the cops if you want, but I'm not leaving without her. You must ask for permission. You must ask for permission. You must ask for permission, he repeated in a monotone voice as he wobbled toward me. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet in clumsy distress. He was on top of me before I could even react. He pinned both of my arms to the wooden floorboard with such ferocity I thought they'd snap in half. You must ask for permission. His hot, wet, fogged breath was against my bare face. His nails made a wet pop as they slid free from his fingertips, overwhelmed by the excruciating force they were applying. I squirmed and struggled, failing to free myself from this inhumane grasp. He slid a swollen, pus-covered tongue from his mouth and licked the side of my cheek. My skin tingled at this hot sensation of slime. Please! I wiggled my legs free, feeling his humid diaper burst apart on my thighs. Just let me go! You must ask for permission, he grinned. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. May we please hide in your house until the lights stop flickering, I screamed. His sweaty, cracked body creaked in protest as he pushed himself off me without saying a word and sauntered back into his recliner, acting as if nothing happened. Mikey? I heard Gracie's voice call from just beyond the living room. I wasted no time in running past the man and into the kitchen behind her. Gracie, I called out. I heard a giggle behind the pantry. You gotta come find me, Gracie peeked out, her Elsa mask covering her face. Gracie, this isn't the time for games. We have to get out of here. I grabbed her hand and raced back outside. But we were no longer in the same neighborhood. Nothing seemed the same as it had been when we entered the house. The streets were empty and barren, torn apart by war. The sky seemed stormy and dangerous. There was a massive cloud of dark energy slowly moving through a house, like a living tornado tearing everything in its path. It made this low growl that reminded me of the sound of an air siren. Then I realized the noise was actually coming from under our feet. The ground itself seemed to glow and shake. All I could think to do was run. As we did leave the main streets, I heard a low groan from a nearby house. Children were slowly emerging from doorways, seemingly enthralled by the strange warbling noises. They were coming after us. Come on, into the park. No, we can't, Gracie insisted, but I didn't give a damn about another rule. We had to hide. As we pushed through the hedges, I told her to crouch down, and I surveyed the sidewalks for any more zombie children. The air was quiet again, and I let out a sigh of relief. Whew, we should probably get home, Graceland, I told her. I turned to see her back turn to me, chowing down on candy she had received, like it was the Last Supper. Hey, calm down. We can eat all of this when we get home, I told her as I turned her towards me. The face I saw was not my sister. Her eyes were jet black, and her skin was covered in what looked like leather. Her teeth razor sharp like a shark, and her costume covered in chocolate and blood. What the fuck? Gracie? I said as I pulled her away from me. I'm not Gracie, the cryptid-looking creature snarled as she tried to snap at my hand. I tumbled backwards and ran from the park, too terrified to even consider where to go. I saw the children swarming together like a horde, led by the bug-faced Frankenstein monster as I ran toward Calhoun Boulevard. I looked back, expecting to see them keep coming, but the neighborhood had changed again to one I was familiar with. I had made it home. I ran straight into my home and locked the door. I don't think I slept a wink that night, and in the morning, I was sure to face a barrage of questions from my parents. I don't know how I was going to explain to them that I lost my little sister. Much to my surprise, though, I saw her sitting at the breakfast table, eating alphabets playfully. Hey, are you okay? I asked, not even sure if the events of the previous night were real. I'm fine, Mikey. A nice man helped me home after you ditched me at the haunted house. Wait, so we did get separated. I realized as I hazily remembered the other girl had an Elsa costume on. In the heat of the moment, I hadn't noticed. Yeah, where did you go anyway? She asked. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm just glad we're okay. I poured myself a bowl of cereal and turned on the TV to hear morning news about missing children from the night before. Photographs were shown, and I recognized some of the ones we had met. Then the screen flickered and showed our own pictures. Haunting words flashed across the screen. Soon to be missing. Mikey, what does that mean? Gracie asked as the screen returned to normal. I swallowed hard and reassured her everything was fine, but I'm not so sure it is. I have a feeling that whatever we experienced that night, it's far from over.
Oh
And scene.
shit.
And scene.
And
And
scene. Oh shit. That's a pretty good one.
yeah, dude, it's a little short story.
That's a pretty good one. Fucking Michael leaving his little sister. What a fuck, dude.
Yeah, dude. I hate my actually my little sister's pretty cool.
You heard it here first. He hates her.
Hey man, don't put words in my mouth.
Clip that and just cut off the end.
Clip it. Yeah, man. So I don't know if I said it before, but that was by user Armchair Detectives, posted to the No Sleep subreddit.
My boy, Armchair Detectives.
Yeah, man. It's a pretty good story.
My boy.
So, Mark, let's hear your story, my guy.
My guy. Alright, guys, are you ready for some insanity? So this is called if you see a woman with a serrated smile, you need to read this as a matter of life and death. And by user born-beach. This is on the No Sleep subreddit. So if you like it, go give them an upvote or whatever.
Or whatever.
Or like comment and say like, this is pretty cool. I like it. Oh, baby. All right, are we ready?
Yeah, dude.
I'm a government employee. My name isn't important. All you need to worry about is what I have to say. I work at a compound known as the facility. Within it, we perform research on things the public would find unappetizing. Officially, we're listed under experimental weapons development, but lately, our umbrella has spread much wider. Suffice to say that there are things out there that go bump in the night. Things both legendary and mundane. That exerts their influence upon us and defy explanation. My job is to interview the individuals who believe they've encountered such entities, and determine the validity of their experiences. This is one such interview. The room is cramped, dimly lit, and smells vaguely of stale piss and black mold. A light hangs above the table between us, rocking back and forth, and doing a poor job illuminating much of anything. Still, I can see the man's face and the fields on my clipboard. It's enough. It will do. I ask the man to tell me his story, and it begins. It happened when I visited her cabin, the man says. He's 29, with a long nose and 5 o'clock shadow. When he reaches for a cigarette, his hand shakes. Not my cabin. It belonged to her, but she invited the 3 of us up. Get away from it all. I make a note on my clipboard. 4 individuals. He nods, taking a heavy drag on the smoke. Yeah, something like that. Get drunk, get stoned, forget life for a while. He swallows, and his eyes dart to the cameras in the corner of the room. He scratches his cheek anxiously. It's a look I've seen before. It's better if you tell me everything, I say, placing my clipboard on the desk between us. Strictly speaking, I'm not law enforcement. I'm not here to have you arrested. Sure, he says. Another long drag. He taps a finger on the desk. Tap, tap, tap. We were doing mushrooms too. At least Steven and I were. Oh, that's fine. I check a box on my clipboard labeled intoxicated.
Now tell me about the event.
It happened last night. The four of us had been drinking in the cabin, but we all slept outside in tents, less spiders to deal with. The cabin wasn't exactly lived in year-round, so a lot of bugs would make their homes in it over the winter and spring.
Now just to confirm, you used the mushrooms while drinking?
I steady my pencil on the form on the box besides intoxicated that reads disqualified.
That combination invites hallucinations.
Look, it wasn't a hallucination, alright? The man seethes for a moment, clenches his hand into a fist while his lips make a thin line. Then he takes a breath and regains his composure. Sorry, he says. Thinking about the night puts me on edge.
Understandable, I say. Such reactions are to be expected after witnessing an event. Now then, you wouldn't mind clarifying my earlier question? Did you consume the mushrooms while drinking?
He shakes his head. No, the mushrooms happened several hours earlier. They weren't even a factor when he trails off, his eyes gazing at this ashtray on the table between us. There's an emptiness to them, a sort of disconnect. I wonder if he's thinking of the legend I suspect that he's encountered. I wonder if he's thinking of Jagged Janus. I clear my throat.
They weren't a factor when the event occurred.
Yeah, they had worn off by then.
You're positive?
He gives me a look of disbelief. No, I'm fucking lying to you for the fun of it. Yes, I'm positive.
Aggressive behavior, I remind him, will not be tolerated.
He opens his mouth and words hang there for a moment. I've done enough of these interviews to know that there's more he wants to say, or maybe yell. He doesn't, though. Instead, he takes another breath, leans back in his chair, and apologizes. Look, he says, I know what I'm gonna tell you is gonna make me sound crazy, or high, or whatever the fuck else. Promise you, though, that it happened, and seeing as you're the one who came to me for this interview, the least you can do is listen. I nod.
Of course, entirely reasonable.
I circle the word irate on my form. What are you writing? The man asks, leaning forward. He narrows his eyes at my clipboard as I pull it away. Why won't you show me?
It's against protocol. Your knowledge of my notes could influence your account. I'd prefer if such biases were avoided. Now please, continue.
He licks his lips. They're chapped, cracked. Fine, he says. Like I said, we were drinking in the cabin, swapping old stories from high school, talking about stupid pranks we used to pull, or places we'd all hang out, or shitty teachers we hated. We reminisced. His finger taps the table. Tap, tap, tap. Pretty soon we were really drunk. The sort of drunk where you stop goofing off and things go deeper. We started talking about our hopes and dreams, about our past and futures. The kind of shit that sets your soul on fire.
Oh, that's very poetic, I say. Are you a writer?
Sometimes.
As such, would you describe yourself as having an active imagination?
He sighs and shakes his head. I describe myself as in the middle of speaking. Thanks. I press my pencil to the clipboard, undetermined. So we're all drinking, he continues, and Emily gets really low all of a sudden, like mood-wise. She seems down.
Emily being the woman who inherited the cabin?
He nods. We asked her what's up, not to be pushy or anything, but just like, as friends, I mean, fuck, we've known each other for over 10 years at this point. We care about each other.
And what does she tell you?
He looks down, and there's a melancholy in his expression. She tells us why she never invited us out there before. I scratch a note on the form, straightening up in my chair.
That reason being?
Her brother died there when they were kids. He drowned to death in the ocean. I frown. It doesn't match the legend.
Anything else?
He glares at me. Are you serious? Anything else? Yeah, that's it, asshole. Her brother died and the place reminds her of him.
A sad story, but not why we're here.
I check a box labeled confrontational.
Please, continue.
Takes a few minutes to think about it. His jaw is clenched, and his eyes are boring into me. Eventually, he takes another drag, breathes out a plume of smoke, and speaks. Like I said, we were drinking, talking, but like all good things, it comes to an end. Emily stops first. She decides that she's ready to head to bed, that she's had enough to drink, so she heads back to her tent. That leaves me, Steven, and Haley. Haley's passed out on the couch, and Steven and I chat for another couple of hours, but eventually we both decide it's time to get some shut-eye too. I nod. So far, nothing mentioned warrants the facility's involvement. But I'm keeping an open mind. The police report sounded like Janice, after all.
According to the police report, I say, rolling my pencil in my fingers, the cabin is where the event occurred. Can you describe it for me, the layout?
Sure. He scratches the back of his head and furrows his brow. His pupils dilate in focus, as though recalling a memory. It's sort of T-shaped, capital T. It's got 2 bedrooms on either side of the T, with a bathroom at the top center. Then there's the living area in front of the bathroom, and finally at the bottom of the T is the kitchen and the front room.
You said the event occurred in the washroom, correct?
He takes another drag of his cigarette, burning it down to the filter. His eyes are bloodshot. You got any more of these? He asks. I reach inside my jacket and pull out a pack, then toss it to him. He eagerly flips it open, slips a smoke out, and lights it.
So the 4 of you get into your tents. What happens next?
He shrugs. I read my book.
Your book?
Yeah, Mistborn. Ever read it? I shake my head.
I don't care for fantasy. What happens after you read the book?
Nature calls. I gotta take a shit, so I get up and head to the cabin. It's pitch black outside when I unzip my tent. I can't even see my feet on the ground.
Pitch black, or had your eyes simply not yet adjusted?
Pitch black, he says flatly. The cabin's on a tiny island off the coast of British Columbia. The only light it gets is the moon, maybe the stars. The night it was overcast, so the moonlight came and went with the clouds.
You carried a flashlight then?
He shakes his head. No, just my phone. I use it to light my. I use its light to make my way to the cabin. Once I get inside, I shut the door behind me. I get a weird feeling.
Can you describe the feeling?
Like I'm being watched. Promising.
Continue.
The place feels empty, lonely. It's just me, the spiders, and my phone. He pauses. Lights making shadows out of everything. The dusty fridge, the messy shelves, and the cluttered counters. There's 1,000 shapes all around me. Shifting as I walk, and this feeling of, I don't know, dread comes over me like I'm not safe. He clears his throat. But I'm drunk enough that the feeling doesn't do much to faze me. I shake it off, I laugh a little. Came to take a shit, and some spooky shadows aren't gonna stop me, right? I guess they call it liquid courage for a reason. He laughs at his own joke. A few seconds later, though, I'm in the bathroom and locking the door behind me. His legs bouncing under the table, and it's shaking the top of it.
Would you like a glass of water?
I ask, pouring him a cup. I recognize the anxious body language and the incessant licking of his lips. I've seen it before. He waves a hand dismissively. I'm all right, he says, but he reaches across and takes a sip anyway. So, I'm about to unbuckle and do my business, and I see movement. It's in the top corner of the bathroom. It's one of those little toilet windows, like the type that's clouded on the bottom for privacy, but clear on the top to let in light.
Yeah, I've seen those,
I say, nodding.
I have one in my bathroom. Is that where the event occurred?
He nods, running a hand through his dark hair. That's where I saw the smile.
Jagged Janice. Describe it, please. He shakes his head.
I'd rather not. Can we just discuss the event?
The smile is part of the event, I remind him. It's important that we get as many details as possible, no matter how uncomfortable those memories may be.
He looks down, and his eyes drift out of focus, remembering it. The smile. It was a row of teeth, except the teeth were too big and too sharp to belong to a human, and there were just so many of them. I looked down at my notes. I read over the description of Jagged Janice, as mentioned in old email chains from the early 2000s.
I'd like to hear more about her teeth.
He bites his lip. Her teeth? Why?
The teeth are important. Describe them, please.
He's uncomfortable. His voice cracks and his chest sighs. But he gives me what I want. The teeth were jagged, serrated almost. The length was all over the place. Some barely broke her gums, others stretched down, piercing her bottom lip. His fingers move again. They're tapping on the metal table. Tap, tap, tap. When I see the smile, my heart starts pounding. I'm frozen there, standing in the dark bathroom with just the light from my phone. My mind's reeling, and I know whoever that smile belongs to. I don't want them seeing me. So I hold my phone to my chest and extinguish the light.
Did the woman showcase an adverse reaction to the light?
Janice, according to her legend, loathed light. No? Or, I don't know, maybe? I can't remember small details. He's sweating now, his eyes transfixed on the cigarette, burning low between his fingers. At that point, my body's mostly just adrenaline. I feel a storm of it coursing through me and screaming at me to run or to fight this bitch or do something. Anything. And I can't. I just stand there, staring at her inhuman teeth, at her horrible, twisted smile, with my phone clutched to my chest like a Christian cross. Then the smile begins to fall away, lowering itself until it's obscured by the foggy part of the glass. In its place are two eyes. He takes a breath. They're wide, angled all wrong, and leaking black fluid. They dart around the washroom, as if looking for something, or somebody. I stay still, paralyzed. There's no light, save the moon framing the monster in the window, so I meld into the darkness. I pray to fucking God the creature can't see me there. I feel dribbles of piss run down my leg. I'm panicked now, completely. I'm losing control of my body. He shivers, taking another long, slow drag on his cigarette. Then, I hear the tapping on the window. Tap, tap, tap. It's followed by this chattering sound, and I realize it's her teeth gnashing together, open and shut, over and over again. I don't want to look at her, but part of me can't stop myself. I glance up to the window, and I see her eyes staring back at me. It's two tiny black dots in a sea of white. My breathing stops. My pulse races. It's just the two of us now, watching one another. I lean forward, interested. Much of that description could have been pulled from the jagged Janice legend itself. Tiny black pupils, the rows of inhuman teeth, the gnashing jaws. I check off the features on my clipboard as I go.
What happens then?
I ask. Then she speaks. It's only 3 words, but it's enough to turn my dribble of piss into a torrent. He swallows his eyes as he recites the words. I see you. I write them down in a circle, the words 3 times. They're not familiar to me.
Did she sound young or old? Describe her voice.
He shakes his head, shuddering. The voice was quiet, hard to hear. The words sounded like they'd been pulled out of a wood chipper. The pronunciation was broken and unnatural, like they'd been cut up by those teeth.
Curious,
I mutter.
Continue.
Her fingers reach up and she taps the glass again. Tap, tap, tap. I chance another look, and all I can see is that terrible, serrated smile. I look away, but I know I need to watch her. I have to monitor, because the fuck knows what this creature's gonna try. So I look back up, but the smile's gone, and so is the woman. It's just me. He puts his face in his hands, and his shoulders quake with silent sobs. A minute passes. It appears we've reached the end of his account.
A harrowing experience, I say.
Giving my notes a final swipe with a pencil, I straighten up in my chair, flattening the front of my jacket, and reaching out to shake his hand.
On behalf of the facility, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share with us.
His sobs taper off, and he's quiet for a moment, and he looks up from his hands. His eyes are red, his voice is shaking. It's not over, he says. There's more. I pull my handshake.
My apologies. Something else occurred?
Yes. The next few hours turned into a nightmare. There you go.
Dude, I got shivers, dude, when you read "I See You," dude. Woo!
Yeah. That was part 1. Part 2 will happen after next story.
After next story. Dude, that one, like I said, it gave me shivers because I don't know if you ever like get that feeling that someone's watching you.
Always. I always feel like
dude,
somebody's watching me.
So yeah, that was a good start, dude. We'll hear part 2 after the break, which I guess we're gonna take right now then, right?
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll catch you on the other side. Is it really that cold, dude, that you're...
It's chilly enough where this is comfortable. It's not really that cold.
Put on a jacket.
Just put a jacket on, man.
All right, let's welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. As always, guys, if you like what you hear, you can support the podcast by going to anchor.fm/we-digress/support, where you can pledge as little as 99 cents a month. Or if you want some merch like Mark's wearing
Oh,
under
sorry.
his burrito blanket.
It is more fun to be a burrito.
You can go to WeDigressPodcast.com and that'll redirect you to the merch. Guys, just a friendly reminder, this is the spooky episode edition of the podcast. And I think we're just gonna roll. We're gonna roll right into the next one.
We're rolling. They see me rolling. They hating. Okay.
So I think I'll read this one. This is called "My Student Submitted the Most Disturbing Living History Project I've Ever Seen," posted by user Gretelcat on the No Sleep subreddit. One of my least favorite parts about being a middle school history teacher is the bullshit living history assignment we get at the end of every school year. Kids are supposed to sit with their grandparents and videotape, voice record, or transcribe their oldest memories for posterity. And it's an easy way to get their GPA up. I've been doing this for 17 years, and when I collected the projects this time around, I assumed they'd be as dull, if not duller than usual. This had not been a particularly bright class. So I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, and prepared for a long night of, I only owned 2 pairs of pants when I was your age, and my brother got beat with a newspaper for hitting a baseball into the neighbor's yard. And of course, these projects were peppered with innocent old person comments that were so horribly sexist and racist, you just had to laugh. Now, I had a girl in my class whom I'll call Olivia. She was pudgy, quiet, and proved herself a consistent B student. I expected her project to be so unremarkable, and perhaps that's why I was profoundly disturbed by what I witnessed that night. Olivia had submitted 2 discs for some reason, and I began with the one marked interview. My screen hiccuped twice with a grainy image of a living room. The place was a hoarder's hell. Olivia was curled up in an armchair, clutching a notebook and looking like a scared animal. Across from her sat a man with a somber countenance, smoking a cigarette and staring at her expectantly. "Go ahead," a woman's voice whispered from behind the camera. Olivia's owlish eyes flashed towards the screen, then back to the man. I'm here with my great uncle Stephen," she began, almost inaudible. He is going to tell us about his oldest memories from being in the army." Great Uncle Stephen looked like he'd rather be in a goddamn trench at the moment, but he waited patiently for the questions to begin. Not surprisingly, Olivia read verbatim from the suggested question sheet I handed out to the students. He answered her curtly. Once or twice, I heard her mother whisper, "Speak up, Olivia," from behind the camera. Typical boring shit. I was intrigued when Olivia set down the notebook and asked, "Did you like being in the army?" That was totally off script. Great Uncle Stephen emitted a chain smoker's wheeze. "Nope. Glad to get out of my town, though." "Where'd you go?" "Balkans." "Uh-huh," she said. I doubted she knew what the Balkans were, and my suspicion was confirmed when she asked, "Was Butt Kiss very different from here?" "Yep." Mom cleared her throat from behind the camera, perhaps encouraging Great Uncle Stephen to be a little more forthcoming. But Olivia seemed genuinely interested. "Uncle Stephen, what is your worst memory from the army?" The old man crushed his cigarette in the ashtray and then slowly lifted himself out of his chair. "I'll be back," he mumbled. Then the camera cut off. When the screen flashed back on, everything was the same except Great Uncle Stephen had several pieces of paper in plastic sleeves laid atop all the crap sitting on his coffee table. One he held in his hand. "I was a kid when I enlisted. Your brother's age. he told her. Olivia nodded. I never saw combat. Both of my deployments were to cities in Eastern Europe that had been destroyed by civil wars. Everything was a mess. I felt like a janitor, for fuck's sake. Mom coughed. Great Uncle Stephen sighed and looked at his paper. My unit was assigned to a school that had been obliterated by all the violence. Broken windows, caved in rooms, and for some reason, the part that got to me the most was that the school had been like this for years before we got there. No one had lifted a finger to fix it. I saw kids walk by it on their way to beg for money or whatever shit they did. The camera dipped towards the floor as I heard Mom whisper harshly at Great Uncle Stephen. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it wasn't hard to imagine. Do you want to hear the goddamn story or not? I heard him bark in response. Then you better let me tell it how I want. Mom, Olivia chimed, please don't interrupt him. Are you presenting this in front of class? No, Mom, we're just handing it to the teacher. I'm sure he's heard the word shit before. Great Uncle Stephen contributed helpfully. I wasn't a he, as a matter of fact, but other than that, the statement was accurate. The camera lifted, and after a couple of blurry focus adjustments, the shot was the same before. I'm talking too much anyway. He lifted the piece of paper in his hand close to his face. In the basement, I found this letter. I didn't know what it said, but I had a buddy of mine translate it. So I'm going to read it now, and then I'll tell you what I saw in the basement. A chill ran down my spine. Mom zoomed in to the Great Uncle Stephen and his letter. His palsied hands trembled as he held up the paper. This is what he read. Dear Sir, I never loved my country. So many of these skirmishes are born from patriotism, a power struggle from the shards of a once great empire. But I do not care what name my home has on a map. This fighting is senseless, and I stay as far away from it as I can. It was not these attacks and disorganized violence that took the lives of my wife and child. It was illness. Mercifully, it happened quickly for the baby. Nadja suffered for longer. I watched in horror, knowing I could do nothing for them. My only solace is that I was there for them every step of the way. I stopped going to work one day, and no one came after me. I doubt they noticed I was gone. Since the school was simply across the field, visible from my window, it would have been easy to go for a few hours each day and come home quickly to care for them. But what was the point? All I did was clean floors. I was as useless to the world as I was to my family. I tried to take Nadja to the hospital, but the journey was too long and taxing. I brought her home and she died that night. After Nadja and the baby were gone, well, I don't remember much. I didn't leave my hovel, barely ate and slept. Thought many times about taking my own life. Tempting though it was, I felt paralyzed by my own helplessness. The one thing that kept me sane was my radio. I never turned it off once, even though I didn't listen to the words being said. In fact, the channel I got the clearest was in English, I think, which I don't speak a lick of, but the voices, the music, and the true knowledge that life existed beyond the violent city sustained me. I have no idea how long passed before I saw the light of day again. I was dizzy from hunger, so finding food was my priority. My radio came with me, of course, since I first holed myself up. It has gone everywhere with me. It talks to me as I sleep and when I wake. I don't know what it's saying, but I know I would die without it. Once I had some food and water, it occurred to me that the only thing left to do was go back to work. So I did. The following morning, I simply returned to the school where I was janitor and got back to work. Nobody made a big deal of it. Like I said, Nadja had been sick for a long time, and those who worked at the school knew it. I appreciate the ones who had pestered me to come back to work during the hardest days of my life. The teachers never said much to me, but we smiled at each other in the halls, and that mutual respect was perhaps the reason I decided to come back after all. The place had gone to dogs without me, so I simply grabbed my broom and rags from the closet and set to cleaning. Everyone was grateful to have me back, I know, and the best part is that nobody minds my radio. I bring it with me everywhere, and I keep the volume low enough not to disrupt the students. No one has ever complained. In fact, I suspect they like it. The schoolhouse is not very big, but does require a lot of maintenance. Floors are always sticky and stained, so I spend most of my time mopping. Kids make messes. I guess that's why I'm still in business. Sometimes I have to move things around to make sure I get every spot on the floor beautiful and clean, but I take pride in that. And the repairs. The school always needs tune ups here and there, and I'm happy to help. Some days I'm reconstructing a desk that broke as I whistle along with the radio. Other times I handle more serious structural issues. Days when I have work like this, I feel truly instrumental, like a cog in a larger machine. How could this school survive without me? It took me a long time, but I once again feel that I have a purpose. There's a larder behind the school that is full of preserved food. In lieu of payment, I'm allowed to take as much food as I need. That arrangement is fine. What would I do with money anyway? I used to bring the food back to my home, just one field away from the school. But when I started sleeping in the basement, no one seemed to notice. This school is special to me, and I can't leave it unguarded. When I am besieged with memories of my wife and baby, I turn up the volume on the radio to drown out such thoughts. It works for me every time, except this morning. Because this morning, I woke up to dead silence. I frantically examined the radio to see what happened. I honestly cannot tell you how many days in a row I've been using it. It simply lived out its life and died naturally, I guess. I spent the entire day trying to fix it. Most of this time, I've been crying. I'm losing my mind without it. I've given myself until sundown. If I cannot fix it by then, I'm going to take my own life. I'm writing this because the sunlight is starting to die, and I know what my fate shall be. I've thought about taking one last walk through the halls of my school, saying goodbye to the students and teachers. I know I will be missed, but I cannot bring myself to leave the room. I cannot go anywhere knowing that my radio is dead here. There are no more tears in me. It feels now that I can't catch my breath. I vomited what little food I had in my stomach, and I'm growing dizzy again, like I did after Nadja died. I'm not long for this world. But before I take my life, I've closed the door to this room and stuck a chair beneath the handle. It is the only room in the basement that has a small casement that lets in just enough light for me to see what I'm doing. If anyone is kind enough to come looking for me, they should not be met with this gruesome sight. Perhaps they will see the door is blocked, smell my rotting body, and simply forget I existed. I have placed both my radio and this note outside the door. Kind sir, if you're reading this, I have one humble request. Please fix it. Save my radio. It did not deserve to die in its sleep, and I am ashamed that I cannot revive it. Now I'm ready to join Nadja and little Ludmila in heaven. I hope the school can find another janitor who loves and cares for it the way I do. The hour is now. Do not forget my radio. Stanislav. When Mom zoomed back out, Olivia had tears in her eyes. Thank you for sharing, Uncle Stephen, Mom said, her voice choked. I think we have enough. Wait, Olivia chirped. He said there's more. What did you find? Before Uncle Stephen could open his mouth, the image disappeared. My jaw dropped. What was it? What did Great Uncle Stephen see? I promptly remembered there was a second disc. This one was unmarked, but I hoped it contained the rest of the interview. There was no video, only audio. The voice that started up was Olivia's. Hi, Miss Garrity. I'm sorry about my mom, but she refused to record the rest of what Uncle was saying. But I asked him to continue and secretly recorded the story as a voice memo on my phone. I remember you said earlier this year that history is written by the people who win wars. But everyone's history is important, even if they're sad, pathetic people, and even if they've never won a single thing in their life. I haven't slept through the night since I finished this project, but you have to hear what my uncle has to say. There were tears in my eyes, too. The sincerity in her voice and her words was beautiful. I was also flattered that she had remembered some trite phrase I threw around because it was what my history teacher said to me. Before I got too sappy over it, the audio began. Fine. K-Mom's frustrated voice. If you want to hear the rest of the story, fine. But this is not appropriate for a school project. Let me finish, Great Uncle Stephen snapped. If it's too much for you, help yourself to a snack in the kitchen. But Olivia wants to know what happened. I heard my mother mumble something and walk away. Olivia and her uncle were alone. I imagined her looking at him expectantly. So, did you find the radio? Or did it get ruined when the school got blown up? He rasped, and I heard the distinct click of a lighter. That letter had a date on it. What date? It was dated 2 weeks before we started rebuilding the school. Didn't you say the school had been destroyed like 2 years ago? Yeah, it had been. There was silence as I felt goosebumps on my arms. The images that came to my mind were almost too overwhelming to express, but Great Uncle Stephen put them into words effortlessly. Clearly, he had spent his whole life thinking about it. This man, this Stanislav, went to a vandalized, falling apart schoolhouse and cleaned up blood and rubble like it was spilled drinks and dust. He smiled at dead bodies in the hallways and believed they were smiling back at him because they liked his radio. He moved around corpses so he could sweep the ground under them. The roof was half collapsed, so when it rained, he must have gotten soaking wet, but was so oblivious that he didn't feel a thing. I could hear Olivia crying steadily. I found the larder he was talking about. It was all pickled, preserved food that probably tasted like shit. Most of the stuff was moldy. Did you see the dead body? Yeah. Hanging from the ceiling, but still, amazingly, lifelike. He wasn't rotten away. This hadn't happened years ago. Did he look peaceful? She asked, a chord of desperation in her voice. Couldn't tell you. The smell was rank, and his face was blue, and his eyes were bulging like this. I imagined him demonstrating. And the radio? Olivia wept. I heard Great Uncle Stephen take a long drag of his cigarette. It was right there, and it was still on. End scene.
Oh shit, Uncle Steven! Oh, that was pretty good. Dude, feels
Not
bad,
gonna lie,
man.
doing that voice for so long that was hurting my throat. I don't know if you could tell there. I was losing it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
I was like right in the back of my throat.
Dude, my fucking Uncle Steven.
Yeah, dude.
Sheesh.
When I read this one, dude, I was like, it might have been because I was tired, but it was like 3 a.m, and I was just like, oh, Stanislav.
No, that was a pretty good one. I like that one. That was pretty good.
Yeah, dude.
That was pretty darn good. My boy, Uncle Steven. Yeah, you like that one, John?
So let's hear it, Mark. You got part 2.
We got part
Woman
2.
with the serrated smile.
So again, this is, if you see a woman with a serrated smile, you need to read this as a matter of life and death. This is part 2, and this is by user Born-Beach. And you can see it on the No Sleep Reddit. So if you like it, give it a thumbs up, comment, be like, hey, this is pretty fucking cool. And yeah. Get ready for this is part 2. I'll read the last couple parts of part 1. I'll just read okay, it has the thing. I'm reading it. Okay, here we go. He put his face in his hands and his shoulders quake with silent sobs. A minute passes. It appears we've reached the end of his account. A harrowing experience, I say, giving my notes a final swipe with the pencil. I straighten up in my chair, flattening the front of my jacket and reaching out to shake his hand. On behalf of the facility, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to share it with us. His sobs taper off and he's quiet for a moment. And he looks up from his hands and his eyes are red and his voice is shaking. It's not over, he says. There's more. I pull back my handshake. My apologies. Something else occurred. Yes, he says. Next few hours turned into a nightmare. That was a recap. Alright. I settle back into my chair. Already there's plenty of details that indicate the presence of Jagged Janice on that sleepy island. But I could always use more. The man clears his throat, and I listen intently as he resumes his account. It takes 10 minutes for me to muster the courage to crack the bathroom door. Do it gently, quietly. You can hardly hear the shitty hinges creak. That's how careful I am. I peer out of the crack, looking for the smiling woman, terrified that I'm going to see her standing in the living area waiting for me. But I don't. Nobody else is in the cabin. It's just me, so I step out across the hardwood floor. It creaks and groans with each step that I take, and each time it does, my heart skips a beat, and I expect to see her jump out of the darkness. He shudders. I'm seeing that smile everywhere now, in every shadow, in every window. I want to shout and scream. I want to call out to my friends and beg them to pull me out of this horror, but they're beyond the cabin door. Out there at the far end of the yard. They're a world away.
Just a moment,
I say, placing the clipboard down.
You never thought to use your phone to call for help?
Weren't you just listening? He says. I was on a backwater island off the coast of rural BC. Didn't even have spotty service. It was nothing. My phone was a glorified fucking flashlight.
Thank you for clarifying.
I mark my clipboard to investigate the service signal in the area. Turns out that there is cellular service, then it's possible he lied about other aspects of his account. A disappointing prospect.
Continue.
Our tents are in the far end of the yard, and so I'm psyching myself up to book it out of the front door. Got my hand on the knob and ready to fling it open and scream bloody murder. That's when I hear it. His fingers thrum the metal desk. Tap, tap, tap. I look at the window beside the front door and see a long arm in a frayed sleeve with crooked fingers playing against the glass. They're drumming a melody, but it's discordant. Strange. It's not music, but more like noise masquerading as song. He drops his burnt cigarette into the ashtray and reaches for another. Hear her voice again. I see you, she says in this
Gravelly, guttural voice.
The tapping gets faster, heavier. I pull away from the front door, fall back into the shadows of the cabin. He lights the smoke and brings it to his lips, then pauses. I see her head raying down to the window. Her eyes gleam in the moonlight, darting around, swiveling in ways they shouldn't be able to. She's searching again for something. For me, maybe. I don't know. He pulls on the cigarette, coughing as he spits out a lungful of smoke. I slide the glass of water across the table toward him, picks it up, and slams the entire thing. When he's finished, he wipes some of the wetness from his chin and continues. Then she's gone.
Again?
I ask, mildly exasperated. There's no part of Janice's legend that indicated her vanishing. He nods. I'm alone and time passes. Minutes, maybe hours. He shakes his head. I just sit there in the living room, my ears and eyes straining for any sound, any movement, anything. I'm trembling and breathing in short bursts, terrified as I breathe too much or too heavily she'll hear me. I wonder how long it's been. Wonder how long until morning comes, and somebody wakes up and comes to check on me or use the washroom. I think about using my phone to check the time, but the idea of its backlight revealing my position terrifies me, so I don't. I leave it be and I sit there a while longer. I make several notations on my clipboard. Terror, inability to move, shadows. I circle the words with a sigh. Sleep paralysis? I look up at him, wondering how likely it is that this whole experience may be nothing more than a bad dream. Still, the possibility of it being a true account is too valuable to ignore.
So then, did you wait until morning?
He laughs. Another drag. Fuck no, he says. It took a while, but eventually I had enough. Calmer, or maybe just more desperate. I don't know. But I just needed to know that my nightmare had an ending. I make a mark on my form, indicating him referencing the experience as a nightmare. Beside it, I scrawl the words, Question? Sleep paralysis?
So, did you check your phone then?
Yeah. He gnaws at his fingernail, a nervous response, often correlated with lying, but not necessarily. I'm quivering as I pull the phone out of my pocket. My fingers presses the power button and my home screen comes to life. It's a stupid Sonic background and it bathes my face in a blue glow.
And, what time was it?
It was 3:34 a.m., about 2 hours from sunrise. He takes a breath, long and deep. So I put my phone back in my pocket, deciding that I can't wait another 2 hours. I need to do something now, before that woman comes back. I tell myself to make a run for it. First, though, I need to wake up my friends. I don't want to make myself an easy target, so I open my mouth to scream and run headlong out of the cabin door and towards the tents. Maybe make it out of there alive and... He pauses, tears coming down his face. He's whimpering now. I tap my pencil rhythmically on the clipboard, my impatience getting the better of me.
And
a hand, long and crooked, wraps itself around my mouth. Something pulls my head back and I smell rotten decay, and a voice whispers in my ear.
I see you.
I raise an eyebrow.
But you got away.
He shrugs, ashing his cigarette in the glass tray. I guess so. I blacked out. When I woke up, it was in a hospital bed, surrounded by my friends.
The ones from the cabin.
Yeah. I check the box labeled Survivor. I chew on the eraser of my pencil for a second, before checking one more box. Post-traumatic stress affected. They're all telling me it's their fault, he says. Emily's mumbling about how we never should have come out to the cabin. Steve is talking about how he and I should have never done mushrooms that afternoon. Haley's blaming herself for dozing off and letting Steven and I get exceptionally drunk. He gives a bittersweet smile. Everybody wants a share of the guilt.
One might say that they've earned it,
I say, hardly masking my disappointment.
It's possible that you did have a case of hallucinatory distress.
I don't think so. At that point, the mushrooms had worn off hours ago. Hell, by the end of it, I wasn't even still drunk. I make a note on the form indicating the subject believed themselves sober at the time of the event.
You said the island was quite remote. I'm assuming the hospital wasn't local to it?
No, it was off the island, an hour or so inland. The man takes a breath, as though happy that the hard part is over. I must have been out for a day at least, because I don't remember traveling there. My interest peaks again. A recurrent aspect of the Janus mythology is a sense of mild amnesia, as well as the presence of minor to severe bite wounds.
And, what did the hospital treat you for?
He coughs, clearing his throat. A mild concussion, as well as water in my lungs.
Water in your lungs?
I toss my pencil down in disbelief.
Seriously?
He shrugs. The doctor didn't understand either.
Okay, so your friends leave, get well cards, you get discharged a couple days later. Now you're here.
I lean back in my steel chair, folding my arms.
Is that pretty much it?
Not exactly, he says darkly. Before they left, I mentioned the smiling woman to them. I sigh, leaning forward.
Could you use the exact phrasing?
Sure, he shifts, uncomfortable. It's when they're apologizing, taking the blame for everything. I interrupt them and ask them a question, but my voice is like sandpaper, so I have to do it twice. There was this woman, I say. She was smiling in the cabin window. Did any of you see her? Stephen and Haley shake their heads. They rub my arm. They tell me I was tripping. They tell me it was a mistake to mix mushrooms and alcohol. They tell me it's their faults all over again, like they're not listening to a word that I'm saying. But Emily's standing back. She's staring at me, and her eyes are filled with something like regret? Her hands find her pockets, and she buries them and looks away. I say her name. She knows something. I can tell. She's seen the woman too, maybe. My pencil slides down the interview form, circling a word that says witness, and annotating it with a small question mark.
Did you confront her about this?
No, he says with a sigh. She left the room too quickly. I don't think she wanted to speak about it. At least, not in front of Haley and Steven. That night, I was alone. My hospital room was cramped and silent. The only company I had was the apple tree outside my window. It took me a long time to fall asleep, but eventually I did. I settle back into my chair, folding my arms and listening. It feels as this might be nothing more than a hallucination after all. There's simply too many departures from the mythology. I woke up to tapping, the sound of fingers on glass, and my eyes snapped open and I stared out the window, fucking horrified, but it was just the apple tree. Some of its branches were brushing against the window and making a tapping sound. He chuckles. So I roll over to go back to sleep, wondering if this was what my life was going to be like from now on. You know, panicking every time I hear a branch on a window or a face in a window. That's when the door creaks open. I frown.
To your hospital room?
He nods. I start freaking out. My breath hitches in my chest. My body tenses. I know that this is it. Smiling woman's back. For real this time. But it's only Emily. She pauses in the doorway and asks me if she can come in. I tell her of course, and she closes the door behind her. She doesn't bother turning on the lights. And as she draws closer, passing through the shafts of moonlight, I see her eyes heavy with bags, her posture slouched, and wetness of tears on her cheeks. She looks exhausted, devastated. I'm sorry, she says, wiping snot on her sleeve. I'm sorry. I thought she was gone. So,
I say, flipping back a page on my clipboard. She knew about the woman after all.
I found the spot I annotated witness and erased the question mark. Yeah, the man says. She said a woman attacked her brother when they were both kids. She said the memory wasn't great because she was maybe 4 years old at the time, but that she remembered him being dragged backwards by his face. She said the woman was smiling the entire time and kept repeating,
"Into the sea with you,"
over and over again. The man pauses, his voice getting lower as he speaks. The woman held him beneath the surf until he drowned. Then she let the waves take him.
Disturbing.
I tapped the pencil thoughtfully against my chin.
And she never brought this up to her parents.
She did. Her father told her it was just her imagination. He said that her brother had fallen into the ocean and gotten swept away, and it was already hard enough to deal with without Emily adding to it. So Emily just buried the memory, moved on. The man looks up at me, his expression despondent. He brings a fingernail to his mouth. That was when we heard it, he says. In the hospital room, a tapping. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the window to my right, the one with the old apple tree.
Was it the woman?
I don't know. I didn't look. I told her not to look either. Emily, I told her just to look at me, focus on me. I didn't know what she saw as a little girl down by the ocean, but I knew I didn't want her to see what I'd seen. He shudders. I didn't want her to see that smile.
Did she listen to you?
He shakes his head. Slowly, unhappily, his hand grips a fistful of his own hair. She looked, and when she did, she screamed. She screamed so loud that the lights came on down the hall, and I heard the overnight nurse call out. And Emily rushed to the window, and I still refused to look, but I heard her beating against it with her fists, clawing at it with her nails. The nurse burst in shortly after and found Emily weeping on the floor. He pulled her out of my room and got a patrol car to drive her home. The man takes a breath. He puts his face in his hands and rubs his eyes. I texted her shortly after, he says.
Yes.
I look at the folder on my desk labeled correspondence, and then down at the watch on my wrist. It's already been more than a half hour past the end of my shift.
If the texts are everything that's left, I can read them on my own.
I rise from the desk and offer my hand to shake. He gives it a weak squeeze, avoiding my eyes, and leaves the room with my pack of smokes and not another word. I sigh, sitting back down in the chair. Another long day, another dead end. I adjust my glasses and pull out the text logs. There is only one sheet with a handful of message receipts. The chance is slim, but the possibility that there's something in there about Janice entices me. The allure of having years of my personal research validated proves too much to resist. I begin to read. As I do, I make note of the timestamps. My experience, they often paint a picture deeper than the words. 1:34 a.m. Dorian. Are you okay? 2:12 a.m. Emily. Not really. 2:12 a.m. Dorian. Did you see her? 2:45 a.m. Dorian. I'm sorry, that was a stupid text. 2:45 a.m. Emily. It's fine. 2:46 a.m. Dorian. I'm guessing you don't feel like talking. 2:46 a.m. Emily. Actually, it might be good for me. 2:47 a.m. Dorian. Yeah? Me too. 2:47 a.m. Dorian. I never got the chance to tell you earlier. Can't imagine how horrible it must have felt. 2:47 a.m. Dorian. See what happened to your brother and have your dad not believe you? That's fucked. 2:55 Dorian, unsent. My bad. We don't have to talk about heavy shit if you don't want to. Did you finish your book on 2:55 a.m. Emily? It's fine. We were never close anyway. 2:55 a.m. Dorian. Sorry to hear. Did you ever tell your mom? 2:56 a.m. Emily. No. My mother was already dying by then. Dad would have killed me. 2:56 a.m. Dorian. Fuck, I'm an asshole. How did I forget something like that? Sorry again. 2:57 a.m. Emily. You're not an asshole. As long as you remembered anything about my birth mother. I mean, you're not an asshole. As long as I've known you, Julie. As long as I've known you, Julie hasn't been my stepmom. She's just been my mom. It's fine. I'd honestly be shocked if you remember anything about my birth mom. I mean, even I hardly do. 2:58 a.m. Dorian. Thanks for trying to make me feel like less of a dick. Appreciate it. 2:58 a.m. Emily. Besides, you're right. 2:58 a.m. Dorian. I am? About what? 2:59 a.m. Emily. You're right that I would have told her about Jonas if I could have. By then, she was so hopped up on painkillers that I hardly recognized her, though. 3 a.m. Dorian. The meds must have been pretty heavy. It's a lot to deal with for a 4-year-old kid. 3:01 a.m. Emily. Yeah, her esophageal cancer was bad. She was in a lot of pain near the end. Pretty sure my ass of a father was having an affair at the time, too. 3:01 a.m. Dorian. I'm sorry, that's a shitty memory to bring up. 3:03 a.m. Emily. Don't be. I actually wanted to thank you. It's the memory I'd forgotten. I think I repressed a lot of memories of her. 3:04 a.m. Dorian. I can't tell if you're pissed or not. Are you sure you're okay? 3:04 a.m. Emily. Yeah. Honestly, if it wasn't for you, I'd probably think I was going crazy right now. 3:05 a.m. Dorian. What? 3:06 a.m. Emily. I saw her too. 3:06 a.m. Dorian. The smiling woman? Everything okay? Who did you see? 3:34 a.m. Emily. I see my mother. I stare at the last word in stunned silence. Her mother? Could she actually have been the origin of the legend? I rub a hand along my jaw, considering what I've heard of Emily's history. She had only been 4 years old at the time of her brother's death, when she witnessed a woman drag him into the sea. Could that woman have been her own mother? Unlikely, but not impossible. Children often reframe moments of terror to understand the incomprehensible. I reach for my briefcase, unclasping the latches on the front and pull out my laptop. I take a breath, and then open up the database software. Emily's easy enough to find. Her last name is plastered everywhere across her social media, so I plug that in. The search function isn't the fastest, but it does the trick. It takes 30 seconds for the tiny rotating hourglass to stop spinning. When it does, I see her. Subject, Emily Caldwell. Father, Hank Caldwell. Mother, Janice Caldwell, deceased. I swallow, my hand shaking on the keyboard. I finally found Jagged Janice? I pour myself a glass of water, finishing it in 2 big gulps. It does little to calm my nerves. Still, it's one piece of the puzzle solved, but Really, it just creates more questions. It doesn't explain several aspects of the man's story. The water in the lungs, the vanishing. Certain pieces don't add up, at least not when compared against the original legend. I hear a knock on the door, 3 sharp raps with a knuckle. I get up to answer it, thinking maybe the man's forgotten his phone or wants to give me back my pack of smokes. When I open it, though, there's nobody. I raise an eyebrow and head back to my laptop. I need to discover the source of these changes. These departures from the Jagged Janeth mythology. This time I bring up my web browser, navigating to one of my preferred resources on urban legends. The website's a bit corny, but it's proven accurate, and its community aspect has been invaluable in my research. After some scrolling, I bring up the Jagged Janeth article. People can leave anecdotal encounters beneath the main text, and sometimes they do. Usually they're all bullshit, and it's simple enough to tell at a glance, but sometimes one of them catches my eye. Mentions seeing a serrated smile, the tapping fingers, and that they found their infant child dead with water in its lungs. I shake my head. Bullshit, clearly. I prayed at least the infant was still alive, or that the poster was some teenager with nothing better to do. I kept scrolling. I see more keywords. There, and then gone. Voice like a meat grinder. The sea with you. I pause, swallowing. The sea with you? Those were the words the man had mentioned Emily said. Words she remembered when she witnessed her brother being pulled into the ocean. To the sea with you? My mind spins, but a picture is forming. Guttural, difficult to understand. Voice. The drowned brother. I see you. No. She was never saying, I see you. She was saying, to the sea with you. The man couldn't understand it, though. He was in such a panic that he defaulted to the simplest phrasing. My heart races. I reach for my phone to make a call, tell my boss what I found. It wasn't long ago the facility had an incident with a man with a red notepad, one in which we learned the core principles of all legends, one in which cost many people their lives. That legends evolve. If the Jagged Janeth legend has evolved, then we need to allocate additional resources to locating it and neutralizing it. I continue to scroll, noticing many of the anecdotes have been posted in the last week, several in the last few days. Even half of them are true, then it imply highly increased activity on Janice's part. I hear another knock on the door, 3 soft raps. I curse, kicking off from my desk and storming to the door, phone still pressed to my face, waiting for my boss to pick up. Once more I swing it open, and once more I look down the cold, empty hallway. Nothing. I slam the door shut and stalk back to the table. My phone continues to ring, and my boss continues to ignore my call. It's really not like her, but I tell myself to relax. It's probably in the middle of supper. I check the watch on my wrist and frowned. The display reads 3:34 a.m., which can't be right. It was 6 o'clock only 20 minutes ago. I heave a sigh, adding broken wristwatch to my list of problems. Then, 3 more knocks. I have to confess that I'm getting fed up. I'll leave this here for now, as it appears my interviewee is having some fun at my expense. Either that or, well, that isn't really a possibility I'd like to entertain. On second thought, I'll post this before I go, just in case.
That was pretty good, dude.
Shit!
That was pretty good.
Fuck, I like that one. That was cool. I gotta read his other one too. That was pretty good.
Yeah, so it looks like he's written like he's creating this universe.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Because the man with the red notepad is another story.
Mm-hmm.
That was really good, dude.
Yeah, I like that one. That was a cool story.
Yeah.
Good job, beach hyphen or boring hyphen beach user who posted this on Reddit, which you guys can go check out on the No Sleep subreddit. It's pretty darn cool.
Good old Jagged Janeth.
Jagged Janeth. Kuro. It's okay, Kuro. There's always a VOD.
Damn, dude. So
Damn. Daniel?
So I have another story that's kind of short.
Hello,
Should I just read it?
Yes, because I have to pee.
Okay, well, I guess while Mark tinkles, I'll go ahead and I'll read this story to you guys, and then we'll call it a night. I'm probably not gonna do voices for this one because the last one like really jacked up my throat. So there you go. So this story is called I Knew a Woman Who Never Took Off Her Wedding Dress, and this was posted by user Polonium Poisoning. Pauline was a sweet woman who lived across the street. We weren't close as kids or teenagers because she was around 5 years older than me, but our parents were friends. I think she babysat me while I was younger too. When my mother learned that Pauline was engaged, she sent me to help on the bridal shower. Poor mom. She thought I was like that because I was too often around boys and needed to learn more how to be more feminine, but she's got that backwards. That's when I first learned that Pauline and her soon to be husband had made a blood oath. The first to die comes and takes the other as soon as they can, she explained to me, swirling the ruby ring gently around her fingers. Isn't that a bit dramatic? What if you end up divorcing and marrying other people? We won't. We're soulmates, she reassured me. Her naivete made her incredibly beautiful, but it felt really wrong being 21 and thinking I was so much more mature than a 26-year-old. I didn't pursue the matter, but she kept talking about him in a dreamy tone. Aiden would like this. I wish Aiden was here, and so on. Her dreamy tone almost made me believe that soulmates existed and that you could make the person you love the most follow you in death just by willing it. I met Pauline's friends and we all ended up having some quality girl time. Pauline explained to us all how she believed that you can wake up in the afterlife and start controlling things with your mind. Of course, your memories will be hazy, she clarified, but that's why we made the blood oath, so we can remember. And how will one get the other back? I asked her, entertaining her. I like to believe that we'll both grow wings. It was all terribly silly when I think back, but Pauline had something about her that made everyone pay attention and marvel at her words. Despite the age gap, we ended up becoming good friends. I think we were finally at an age where it didn't matter anymore. Since I was in college but lived with my parents and didn't need to work, I had a lot of spare time to accompany her to wedding dress fittings, cake testings, and all the little things that were the world of brides. But Pauline was a pleasant bride to be, and she never freaked out. She was just thrilled about marrying the man of her dreams and wanted to make it as pretty as possible. Little by little, I grew to understand her devotion to Aiden, and he was just as crazy about her, if not more. When they were together, the world felt like a brighter and warmer place, like marshmallows slowly melting over your heart. The wedding day came around half a year after the bridal shower. It was neither big nor small. It felt like Pauline and Aiden were able to invite exactly everyone they wanted around on their happiest day. Not one more, not one less. I felt somewhat honored to be there. Still, the happiest day never came. When Pauline arrived, belated as any bride should, there was whispering and disquiet. Aiden wasn't there yet. Her smile didn't falter because she was completely sure that he would not bail on her. But I could tell she was worried. The bridesmaids started making calls to try to find out if the groom had a sudden illness. Soon they realized that Aiden's parents were there, but not his brother. They informed that their other son was supposed to be driving the groom as part of the best man's duties. When the devastating news came, everyone wanted to comfort her. Everyone wanted desperately to protect her precious heart, but it was too torn apart to notice anyone else. It was all too fast and scary. A sports car ran a red light straight into the mirage. The man in the passenger seat was dead on arrival. The driver was taken to the hospital, but his state was critical. It was hard on everyone. Aiden's brother ended up surviving, but he'll be tetraplegic for life due to the severe injuries on his spinal cord. As far as I know, he's miserable because he wished he could have been the one to die. Right after the wedding that never happened, Pauline and Aiden's parents dealt with selling the house they had just bought, and Pauline continued living with their parents. They both still worked office jobs, so her friends and I started taking turns to keep her company while they weren't home. I did my best to be there for my neighbor and friend, but she wasn't there. She was living in delusion, and the only thing you could see leaking into reality was her desolation. I never saw such a deep, heart wrenching sadness. Pauline refused to take off her dress. She would spend the whole day by the window waiting for Aiden and the whole night crying because she missed him so desperately. every single day. She was hopeful it was a matter of time until he woke up on the other side and remembered to bring her along. That's why she wouldn't take off her dress. He had died in his wedding suit, so it was only natural that she was up to par. Her parents and every single one of her friends tried to coax her into changing her clothes. We promised she could always keep the dress close for when Aiden came, but she knew that we didn't really believe he would. It was like promising your kid that you'd buy them a Happy Meal on some other day. No one dared to penetrate her grief and force her out of the dress. She spent the day in it, slept in it, even bathed in it. Since we live in a warm and arid weather, having it dry wasn't an issue, only everything else. The once beautiful organza and silk were now ragged, grimy, and smelling, but she still refused to take it off. She started to believe Aiden wouldn't be able to spot her in the crowd if she wasn't wearing it. It was impossible to change her mind, and even though she was seeing a therapist 3 times a week, she wasn't improving. Her mourning and PTSD were turning into a darker, more permanent mental illness. She started talking to Aiden, then explained to us that he was nearby so she could feel him coming. He was just taking a while because flying is really hard when your wings are newly acquired. Then one morning, she disappeared for good. No one saw her leaving, and no one saw her at all after that. The only thing that they were able to find in the small grove behind the house was her filthy wedding dress. It had 2 large holes poked in the back, like it had grown wings. After finding the dress, everyone who loved Pauline was relieved. Her mother steadily admitted that she actually believed that Aiden somehow had come back to take her. Others weren't so fond of the supernatural explanation, but thinking that there was a chance it had happened brought us a sense of closure. It's not that we were happy about her death, but we were comforted by the possibility of her finally finding her peace. She was an angel after all. Why wouldn't she grow wings and escape her flesh prison? The family held a beautiful memorial service in her honor, and slowly we all started moving on with our lives. Now, you might ask what I believe in. I would laugh bitterly because I don't have this choice to begin with. Being the person who spent the most time watching Pauline those days, it was only natural that I be the one to find her dead in the bathtub. Hiding the subsequent hiding and subsequently getting rid of her body was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Tampering with the dress was eerily healing for me. Still, I think that she'd be pleased to know that I faked her rapture. A romantic and mystifying death fitted her far more than a suicide.
Dude,
End
holy
scene.
fuck.
Yeah, dude. When I read that one, I was like, whew.
Holy shit.
Yeah, dude.
Fucking Jesus, dude.
Yup.
God damn it, Pauline. God damn it.
God damn it.
God damn it, Pauline. That was pretty good. Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, dude. It's a nice little story. Guys, I think that's gonna do it for us tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed this very special Spooktober
Yeah, I hope you guys
podcast.
liked the stories, because those were fun to read. They were spooky.
Yeah, dude. It was honestly this entire month, with the exception of that one podcast, it's probably never gonna air. It was really fun. It was really fun reading the stories every episode. So, hopefully we're still doing this in a year, and we'll do it again next October.
Hell yes.
I think with that, guys, we're gonna go ahead and call it a night. As always, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. We are at We Digress Pod. You can find Mark at on Twitch at CloudMark27. He is at CloudMark_ on Twitter and Instagram, and simply CloudMark on YouTube. And you can find me on all those platforms. I'm Mike Madran0. Anything else, Mark, before we end the episode?
Guys, remember, we are playing Among Us right after this. So get pumped. Get ready.
So if you're watching this on YouTube, on Twitch, hop in the Discord. We'll move you into the stream channel, and we'll play some Among Us. Guys, thank you so much for checking out tonight's episode. We super appreciate you. As always, you can support the podcast by going to anchor.fm/WeDigress/support, where you can pledge as little as 99 cents a month. Or you can go to WeDigressPodcast.com. and purchase a sick ass t-shirt or hoodie.
A sick ass t-shirt or hoodie.
Yeah, t-shirt like the one Mark is wearing if you're watching the video version of the podcast. Guys, we love you. We appreciate you. Remember to wear a mask. Remember to social distance. Stay safe. We'll catch you next time.